to The Cat Who Project. In this episode, we are taking a look at where Qwilleran is at in this second book, The Cat Who Ate Danish Modern. So at the end of book 1, Qwilleran was feeling rather pleased with himself. If we ignore the fact that his landlord got murdered, everything else sort of worked itself out for Qwill. He had solved the mystery, he had a nice apartment, he had a date with a very attractive lady, and he had acquired the company of a very fine cat, Coco. But at the start of book 2, Qwilleran has definitely come down from the high he was feeling, and in chapter 1, Qwilleran considers his 4 problems in this passage. He is womanless. He received an eviction notice, and in 3 weeks he would be homeless. At the rate the moths were feeding on his neckwear, he would soon be tireless. And if he said the wrong thing to managing editor today, he might very well be jobless. Over 45 and jobless. It was not a cheerful prospect. And in this passage from chapter 3, you can really see that Qwilleran is sort of stuck in the same situation he's been in for a long while. He's talking to Odd Bunsen when he says, "You married guys think you've got all the problems. At least you've got a home. Look at me. I live in a furnished apartment, eat in restaurants, and I haven't had a decent date for a month." His mood does not improve when managing editor, Percy, breaks the news to Qwilleran that he's off the art beat, which is a good thing, but is now in charge of a new weekly supplement on interior designs called Gracious Abodes. Qwilleran is mortified. He's gone from being a notable crime writer to being assigned the art beat, and now, perhaps even worse, he's on interiors. So in terms of careers, it's not great. But at least he still has a job and it pays more than the art beat. And as he does some quick calculations, he realizes that this new income would allow him to live comfortably and pay off some old debts. Qwilleran does end up moving apartments in The Cat Who Ate Danish Modern, from his downstairs apartment in the Montclements house to Harry Norton's apartment at the very swish apartment block called Villa Veranda. Harry is away on business and doesn't mind that Qwilleran has a cat, so Qwilleran sublets the apartment for, well, at least the duration of this book. He absolutely loves this apartment. It's modern, soft, comfortable, but rugged. When he first sees the apartment with Harry Norton, Norton asks Qwill, "Do you go for this modern stuff? Expensive as hell when it's done right." With awe in his voice, Qwilleran said, "This is great. This really gets to me." And when he's telling Odd Bunsen that he's moving in, he says to Odd, "You should see the bathrooms at Villa Veranda. Gold faucets." So how does Qwilleran look in book 2? Well, he's still a bit scruffy and portly, and he still has to wear neckties that have been nibbled by moths. But he does tidy himself up on the way to his meeting with Percy, stopping for a haircut and a light trim of his moustache. His famous moustache has just a bigger role in book 2 as it did in book 1. In The Cat Who Ate Danish Modern, Qwilleran's moustache is described as down-curved, bushy, and luxurious. But it also sprang to attention, prickled, reared up, tremoured, and signalled to him. And Qwilleran, at different times, absently ran a spoon handle through his moustache. He smoothed it, huffed into it, tampered with it, and smoothed it vigorously. There's also references to his intuition through his moustache, just like in book 1. In book 1, there's this passage, and it happens when he has his first dinner with Montclements. He says, "Do you want to know something? I have a funny feeling about my moustache. I've never told this to anyone, but ever since I grew this set of lip whiskers, I've had a weird idea that I'm more aware. I seem to see things more clearly." In book 2, there's a more subtle reference to his intuition, and he actually says it to Arch Riker. He says, "I've been getting some interesting vibrations this morning. I think Percy's giving me a new assignment." In chapter 21, there's another nice reference to Qwilleran's and Coco's intuitive whiskers. It says, "Qwilleran's moustache twitched in his sleep. So did the cat's whiskers." But there's also this lovely passage that kind of reminded me about how Agatha Christie's Poirot treated his own magnificent moustache. From chapter 15. He considered shaving a spiritual rite, part ancestor worship, part reaffirmation of gender, part declaration of respectability, and it required the utmost artistry. As with later books, Qwilleran attracts the attention of the ladies. When he walks into the Daily Flux in Chapter 1, just after his haircut and trim, it shows that he can still grab attention even after 7 months at the Flux. This passage. More than a few eyes turned his way. Qwilleran had been a subject of conjecture with his ample moustache, picturesque pipe, and unexplained past. And Qwill definitely has an eye for the ladies. As several members of the women's department filed past him on the way to their morning assignments and morning coffee, Qwill checks them off with a calculating eye. He thinks to himself, one was too old, one was too homely, the fashion writer was too formidable, and the society writer was married. And then there's this line in Chapter 19. The woman had sassy eyes and she flirted with her shoulders when she walked. He liked sassy, flirtatious females if they were young and attractive. But he does end up dating a lovely young woman named Alicoque Wright, who turns out to be Cokie, a recurring character in later Cat Who books. He meets Cokie at Mrs. Middy's decorating suite. She's bright and witty, and Qwilleran likes her kidding green eyes. Cokie tells Qwilleran that he's better looking than his picture in the magazine. She said he looks serious and responsible, but also interesting. She then immediately asks him if he's married. And there was actually a reference to his marriage in Chapter 1. It says that he was once married to a woman executive, and it's a thought he has in reference to the wariness he feels whilst receiving a prolonged, friendly stare from one of the women's editors. But back to Qwilleran and the younger Cokie. In Chapter 11, after several dates, she tells Qwilleran that she prefers older men, giving his hand a blithe squeeze. Qwilleran's a little offended, saying that he's not that much older. But then there's a sweet line where he toasts Cokie with one of her weird cocktails, saying, "To Cokie, my favourite girl, skinny, straight-haired, and articulate." Another major thing to happen to Qwilleran in this book is that he expands his cat family. We meet Yum Yum fairly early on in the book. Qwilleran has properly adopted Coco in Book 2, and they move to Villa Veranda together. Coco really is the centre of Qwill's life, and he becomes so concerned with Coco's behaviour at one stage that he actually consults a psychiatrist, who is basically an old lady who understands cat behaviour. She is the one who suggests that Qwill get another cat because she thinks that Coco is lonely. Yum Yum belonged to Mrs. Tate, who had recently died. Her husband, Mr. Tate, was planning on moving and had simply put Yum Yum outside to fend for herself because he didn't want her. Qwilleran is appalled by this. There's this line in Chapter 19. Qwilleran controlled his temper. He had a particular loathing for people who mistreated animals. So at the very end of the book, Qwilleran goes to collect Yum Yum, and as a result, he becomes the dad of not one, but 2 Siamese cats. So in The Cat Who Ate Danish Modern, we continue to get to know Qwilleran. He expands his little family and he does what he does best. He investigates and solves mysteries. But he's still unsettled. His lodgings are only temporary. He's basically living paycheck to paycheck, and the interior design beat at the Daily Flux is not really where he wants to be. It'll be interesting to see what beat he lands in Book 3. Well, that's it for this week's episode of the Cat Who Project. Thank you for listening. My name is Rohan, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye now.